Where do we move from that? Should it be that we're talking about Tony Blair? We've seen Boris, but Blair is the man, of course, who was winding up war in the Middle East all those years ago.
Look, absolutely, yes. We need a moment of national renewal, and who better to step into the breach than Tony Blair, who's just issued over the past couple of days a new report calling for a new national purpose. A new national purpose is a very profound statement. We're going to harness data for health. Right. So what is this all about? The UK has a unique opportunity to become a world leader in the use of health data to drive research and innovation. Realising these public benefits requires the NHS to collaborate with the right partners, public sector organisations, non-profits, academia and private companies without compromising its core principle that healthcare must remain free at the point of use. So this is a public-private marketplace paid for with your taxes, where the pharmaceutical industry is able to experiment on the British public algorithmically, automatically across this data platform. And this is going to be our new national purpose, according to Tony Blair, who is the man pulling the strings behind Keir Starmer. What are the 4 recommendations? So one is setting up a national data trust by 2026 as a company owned by the government and the NHS with co-investment from industry. They're looking for £150 million of external investment, which means industry will own this core national asset, will have part ownership in this core national asset. Number 2, consolidating other existing health data access points, so making this the single source of truth for patient data across the entire integrated health system. Number 3, creating a coherent clinical trials service by integrating the efforts of National Institute for Health and Care Research and NHS England. So this is very much about trials. This is about the pharmaceutical industry first and foremost. And finally, amending legislation on data controllership within the NHS to move away from the current model where general practitioners are the sole controllers of a lot of patient data. So this is about putting more power into the hands of the system administrators and taking it away ultimately from clinicians working on the front lines, and as an extension of that, of patients as well. Now, not wishing to put the cart before the horse, they also issued a target operating model for the new platform. So this is a detailed document that came with the report, which explains exactly how you'd build it, has detailed technical architecture, a roadmap for implementation, recommendations for how to overcome objections and move this through the regulatory process, and ultimately put this outside of the control of elected politicians and into the hands of this public-private consortium that they want to run this system. Now, this all sounds quite suspect, so Blair has sent an emissary to assuage our concerns and convince us that this is actually a good thing. Let's have a little listen to what he has to say.
The NHS is not savvy enough to use data properly. I don't think that's true. Certain sensitive types of data should be off limits for commercial purposes. Absolutely, that is the right thing to say. When we talk about the use of health data, there are certainly use cases that are so sensitive that we should really just not have it on the table. For example, for insurance companies to have access to health data that might lead to adverse outcomes. So we need to set out the right guardrails for different kind of users when they want to access health data to make sure that public is protected at all costs. Commercialization will only ever have a negative impact on public trust. It depends on how you do it, because if you do it wrong, not engaging with the public, not really being transparent, not making sure that public concerns are properly addressed before you move forward, then obviously whatever you're going to do is going to risk losing public trust. The TBI proposal here is very attentive to that. The NHS is not savvy enough to use data properly. I don't think that's true, because we need to give a lot of credit to the NHS in terms of how they are really trying quite hard to make sure that this works. So the Data for R&D program and the ongoing initiative for secure data environment is a good example of that. The UK is already attentive to the question of how to make better use of the data resource to drive better health outcomes and innovations. And to accelerate that, the government needs to pay more attention to it so that there's more political awareness, and then it needs more resources. TBI's proposal here is to try to think of a way that can radically use NHS's resources to deliver outcomes that would benefit the population. And it really builds on what NHS is doing right now.
So we have a foreign national, I believe, Henry Lee. I believe he's Chinese. Policy strategist. I think he appears to be like early 30s. Right? This is a very, very young guy. He's been at the Blair Institute for just under 2 years. He started off as policy lead for the Global Health Security Consortium, focusing on adult vaccination, pandemic preparedness and response. Terrifying. And then he's now become the senior policy advisor for policy and politics. Can you be a policy advisor for policy? That's a bit odd, isn't it? But anyway, he's here to talk about our new national purpose, Britain's new national purpose. He's all about health, biotech, industrial strategy, and really crucially, let's be honest, capital markets reform. I'm not feeling particularly reassured.
I'm certainly not. And I'll just say, somebody in the chat box said, well, nobody's taking notice of Tony Blair. The problem is that many of the people in the wider public are not listening to Tony Blair, but they need to be, because, of course, he's describing the sorts of policies that are going to affect all of our lives if we allow him to get away with it. So absolutely, we should all be watching Tony Blair. Thank you for that.